All right, guys, welcome back to another episode of Running with Wolves. Today is a very special episode. If you are watching on video, you may already see what's happening down here, but we have a new member of the podcast crew, which we're very excited about. This is Honey. For those of you who are just listening. For those of you who are just listening on audio, I did get a new puppy, so we're adding her to our little fam bam. Which is super fun, but right now she's very clingy. And I tried to settle her before recording these episodes, and unfortunately, that's not happening. So she's gonna join us. Shadow's taking a nap. For those of you that don't know, I have an almost 9-year-old black lab as well. So with that being said, we're going to get into this episode of Running with Wolves. I'm really excited to talk about this episode because I talked about this a little bit on TikTok, but I haven't, fully debriefed on this yet. So I'm really excited to chat with you guys about this. So today we're going to talk about Bumble's really big marketing fumble. We're also going to talk in another episode about a different marketing fumble that happened recently. And I am not trying to make a pun when I say the word fumble, but Bumble's marketing mishap that they had was, in my opinion, a really great example of what not to do. It was a great example of how to really mess up listening to your target audience, honestly. So we're going to talk through basically what happened. We're also going to talk about the context of why it was such a big mistake in terms of marketing. And we're also going to talk about what they should have done instead. And we're also going to talk about if I was their competitors like Hinge, Tinder, any of those things, what I would be doing right now in my marketing. So let's dig into it. You guys know that I love to nerd out on all of this stuff. So let's dive into all the dirty details. Okay, so first things first, if you guys have not seen it, basically what happened was, so Bumble's original CEO was Whitney Wolfe Herd, and she is absolutely fantastic. I think that, she's really up there in terms of female CEOs that I admire. She did a really great job, in my opinion. She took the company public. She turned them into a $1 billion corporation and company. So she is, in my opinion, a really, really great CEO. I've watched so many interviews of her. I've read so many articles of interviews of her where she really talks about why she does what she does, how she does it so well, her style of leadership, all those different things. And I think that not only did she do Bumble, the company, right, but she also did her team right. She did a really great job just in terms of leadership. So essentially what happened is they brought on a new CEO. So after almost 10 years, Whitney stepped down as CEO for a myriad of reasons, and they brought on Lydianne Jones. Now, she basically decided, so essentially when she came in, the biggest thing that she did was she really reconsidered whether women should make the first move in dating. Now, obviously we're here to talk about marketing and sales. The whole dating world right now is a totally different ball of wax, but long story short, Bumble's signature was the fact that women had to make the first move while using the app. So anytime you would match, for those of you who have not used a dating app, God bless your souls. If you've not had to use a dating app, honestly, props to you, because I don't think anyone should ever have to. Actually, I think everyone should have to use a dating app. It's really like a unique form of torture. So basically with Bumble, essentially, you guys know the concept of a dating app. You're swiping left if you don't like someone, you swipe right if you do like somebody. If you swipe right on them, they swipe right on you, you guys match. Now, any other dating app, either of you guys could quote unquote make the first move or send the first message. But with Bumble, their signature was that women had to make the first move. And I actually really liked that because I felt like, not as a consumer, but almost as a brand, number one, it really differentiated them. We talk about UVP all the time, right? I think it was a huge unique value proposition because they had the ability, if they did it right, to really attract in women who were serious about dating. A lot of dating apps struggle to keep enough women on their platform. That's the biggest issue for them. or one of the biggest issues that they have to combat, is constantly trying to keep more women on their platform. So it was a huge unique value proposition. It was a great marketing and sales tactic, obviously. They could, cater to women really easily, whereas other dating apps really struggled to market to women, or didn't struggle, but it was easiest to market to men. Obviously, women, it's a little bit more difficult. So the fact that the first thing that she did when she came in was reconsider this signature UVP of theirs, essentially, to me, was a huge mistake, in my opinion. So basically, and the point that I'm trying to get to is like the marketing campaign that came out. So essentially what happened is basically they were going to unveil this new version of Bumble where women didn't have to make the first move. So men could make the first move. They were, there was a bunch of other stuff, obviously, that they did to the app, but that was really I would say, like the majority of what they were trying to push. So they were trying to get this new wave of people onto the app, given that women didn't just have to make the first move. Now, what I want you to consider and remember before I tell you about what this campaign was, is that up until this point, they have primarily marketed to women. On top of that, they're the biggest, I would say, like segment of their audience, of their target audience, is women. And on top of that, women's experience in dating right now is not the best for a multitude of reasons, obviously. We've seen the whole thing on TikTok of like, would you choose the man or the bear, right? So that's one situation that we're not even going to dive into right now. Because again, we're here for marketing and sales. And if I get down that trail, we're going to be here for a 3-hour episode. But the other reason is that, in my opinion, men that are millennials, Gen Z, any man right now that is in the dating world sucks, honestly. I haven't been a part of the dating world in a while, maybe like a couple years. But what I will say is that most men suck. And there are rare exceptions, as there are with everything. But a lot of women are choosing to date more intentionally. They're choosing to not date as much. They're choosing a lot of different things rather than casual dating. They're choosing to focus on themselves, be celibate, any of those things, because of either really negative experiences that they've had that have risked their safety while dating, or just the fact that they can't find good men, unfortunately. That every man either just wants to hook up or, any of those things, right? And women who are looking for serious relationships can't find partners that are looking for the exact same thing on dating apps. So I want you to remember, this is the largest segment of their audience that they are speaking to, right? Essentially what happened is Bumble decided to unveil a series of billboards that essentially made fun of or poked fun at the fact that so many women are deciding to stay at home on a Friday night, be celibate, any of those things. I'm going to read you what some of them said in just a second. Okay. So one of the first ones said, full well, and I'm just looking at this on my computer right now, full well, a vow of celibacy is not the answer. Let that sit for a second. Thou shalt not give up on dating and become a nun. What? Now, I want to compare this really quick to a billboard ad that they released in 2018. This one says, be the CEO your parents always wanted you to marry, then find someone you actually like. Look at the difference between the two. That is, I get chills thinking about it, you guys. And obviously I know I'm such a marketing nerd, but look at the contrast. A vow of celibacy is not the answer. Thou shalt not give up on dating and become a nun. And then we flash back to 2018 and it says, be the CEO your parents always wanted you to marry, then find someone you like. Their target audience has not changed. Their target audience is women. And I understand that with this new version of Bumble, they're trying to appeal to a lot of different people. There was a bunch of other billboards that they obviously released with this new campaign. You guys can go search for them. You'll see them really easily. There was something about like, you no longer need to put your retainer in at 7 p.m. on a Friday night or something like that. Now, there's a couple of things that I want to talk about here. Number one, I want to talk about why this was such a massive mistake on Bumble's part. I actually also want to talk about their response to the backlash that they received for this marketing campaign, because I also think it's a great example of if you really fuck up as a brand, how to respond. Because we've seen so many like just awful responses from brands that really, really fuck up. So with that being said, let's talk about why it was a mistake. Oh, I'm supposed to talk about how I think this happened. Now, before we talk about why it happened, before we talk about why it was such a massive mistake, I want to talk about why I think this happened. Now, like I said, the whole point of this marketing campaign was to steer people towards the quote unquote new version of Bumble. And the new version of Bumble was trying to target both people, men and women alike, because it was no longer about women, right, who were making the first move. So I think they were, number one, trying to be a little more polarizing in terms of their marketing. Now, you guys know I'm a fan of polarizing marketing. However, I am a fan of polarizing marketing when you take your target audience into consideration. If they had done their homework and they knew who they were speaking to, and you guys hear me talk all the time about putting yourself into your target audience's shoes, thinking through their experiences. If they had thought through their target audience's experiences and literally looked at any of the tweets, social media posts, TikToks, anything like that people are creating about dating in 2024, specifically women and their experiences that they've had, in terms of assaults, in terms of potentially being killed. Like there's so many women who've had experiences where they had to call the cops because they mistakenly went back to, someone's house on the first date, and could have ended up dead or massively, massively hurt, right? There are so many women who speak about those experiences. There are also just so many women in general that are done with dating right now because men suck, like I said. So if they had done their homework, like this is a perfect example of what happens when you do not do your market research, when you do not listen to your target audience, when your marketing is a monologue and not a conversation, when you plug your ears and you're like, la, 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 I can't hear you. Like this is a perfect example. What they were trying to do was be polarizing, was be funny, was bring a little bit of playfulness, I think, back into their marketing because it had been so quote unquote serious before. But like, for example, there were a bunch of other billboards that they did in the past. Let me see if I can find some. Like there were like people would talk about how obsessed they were with Bumble's marketing so much in 2018, 2020. One of them was like, be the doctor your parents always wanted you to marry, then find someone you like, right? I don't know if you guys can hear the puppy noises in the mic, but oh well. So, like I said, let me see. Like this was during COVID. Not all major attractions are canceled until 2021. Bumble, right? Like that's playful. It's speaking to your target audience. It's speaking to the current situation that's happening. So to me, again, I think they were trying to be a little more polarizing, separate themselves from the herd, do something different, and unfortunately, they did it in the wrong way. There are so many things that they could have said differently. And so like, for example, if they were listening to their target audience, like they could have done something totally different in regards to like the man versus the bear, right? It's like, we know you'd probably rather choose a bear, but let us try and find a man that you'd rather choose or something like that like deserves your choice or something along those lines, right? Like we've changed so you don't have to. We know you'd rather, that was one of their slogans. It's like, we've changed so you don't have to. We know you'd rather choose the bear, but let us try to find you a man that is deserving of your choice or something along those lines, right? Or don't just speak to women, right? Speak to people who are non-binary in the LGBTQIA plus community. Like, there's so many other things they could have done to be funny and polarizing and like not necessarily pick on men, but like know your freaking audience, know who you're appealing to, recognize the fact that right now, unfortunately, men suck or they're extremely dangerous for a lot of women, right? So know your audience, speak to them, and be better, I guess. Like, to me, this feels just like very, very lazy marketing, honestly. Okay, so now that we've kind of talked about what their mistake was, I want to talk about the response that they gave, because in my opinion, it doesn't fix everything. But if I could show you guys a response from a brand, like an apology from a brand that I actually think they did a great job on, this would be it. So you guys have heard me talk about in the past, when there are situations going on in the world, when there's a pandemic or a war or Roe v. Wade is happening, like any major event in the world, how do you respond as a brand? And the strategy that I have kind of goes hand in hand with, like, if you get yourself into some hot water as a brand, how do you apologize? Like, what kind of statement do you make? Obviously, we've seen so many like awful influencer, celebrity, or brand apologies where they just like sit in front of a camera and like cry. And you're like, that you didn't take any ownership. You didn't apologize, any of those things. So what I have always said is you need to make your stance known, convey your message, and then put your money where your mouth is. Do something about it. Don't just have a stance. Make sure that your brand is actively doing something that falls in line with the message that you've given. So I'm going to read you guys Bumble's response. Give me just a second. Okay, so long story short, basically, I believe, I can't find the exact date, but I'm pretty sure it was on like April 30th or like May 1st that they released these new billboards, and they released an apology on May 13th. Now, that's 2 weeks after the backlash that happened. People were pretty much in an uproar, being like, this is kind of fucked up, right? And for good reason. What I will say is there's two sides to this, right? Some people have said like, oh, did they not respond soon enough? Or should they have responded faster? Should they have taken them down faster? There's two sides to the coin, right? And I can see both of them. As a business owner, you have to weigh your pros and cons, right? So like anytime you're doing something polarizing like that, there's bound to be people who respond negatively and positively. We already know that, right? But what you want to ask yourself when you are pulling a marketing campaign, pulling anything that you've put out in response to backlash is, will this eventually kind of fade, right? So for example, in my opinion, I think like 5 business days is a good amount of time for you to gauge your audience's response, especially with a brand this big. Like, let's say our audience, because we know our audience very, very well. Let's say we put out, and we would never do this obviously because we're so in tune with our audience, but let's say we put out a marketing campaign that was really not good, right? We were trying to do the same thing as Bumble. Our audience had a very negative response to it. I am used to, because a lot of our content is very polarizing, I'm used to some people having negative reactions to our content, to what we say, any of those things, right? So at times you learn to kind of tune that out. But if the response to a piece of content, to a marketing campaign that we did was like overwhelmingly negative after like even 3 days, in my opinion, I'm like, I think we should pull it, right? That's never happened to us. But to me, that would kind of be the point where I'm like, ooh, we need to start having some conversations about this, right? So for them to not respond for like 2 weeks is kind of slow, in my opinion. I think they were really trying to kind of wait things out and see if people would adjust, given that it was a little bit more polarizing, but clearly people didn't, right? So I think there needs to be a point at which you say like, okay, to me, if you're a brand, if you're posting something polarizing, if you're coming out with a marketing campaign that's polarizing, and you're not sure how the audience is going to respond, or you think it's going to be positive and it turns out to not be that way, 5 business days should probably be the max amount of time before you pull it. Now, with that being said, I do think their apology was very good for a brand. I think their response was good for a brand. It shouldn't have happened in the first place, but if you fuck up, this is a good example, I think, of how to respond. It says, to our beloved Bumble community, we made a mistake. Our ads referencing celibacy were an attempt to lean into a community frustrated by modern dating, and instead of bringing joy and humor, we unintentionally did the opposite. Some of the perspectives we heard were from those who shared that celibacy is the only answer when reproductive rights are continuously restricted, from others whom celibacy is a choice, one that we respect, and from the asexual community for whom celibacy can have a particular meaning and importance which should not be diminished. We are also aware that for many, celibacy may be brought on by harm or trauma. So they did a good job there saying, we made a mistake. That's number one with any apology or anything like that, is take ownership, right? We made a mistake. Then you're voicing that you've listened to your community. Here are some very specific things that we heard from our community. For years, Bumble has passionately stood up for women and marginalized communities and their rights to fully exercise personal choices. We didn't live up to these values with this campaign, and we apologize for the harm it caused. They're reiterating their values, their goal as a brand, and they're apologizing for not doing that. Then, in my opinion, this is where it gets good, and this is kind of where they're putting their money where their mouth is. So here's what we're doing. We've removed these ads from our global marketing campaign. Bumble will be making a donation to the National Domestic Violence Hotline, among other organizations, as a part of our ongoing efforts to support the work being done around the world to support women, marginalized communities, and these impacted by abuse. We will also, I thought this was actually really cool, be offering these partners this billboard space that they had already bought to display an ad of their choice for the duration of our reserved billboard time. Please keep speaking up and telling us how we can always be better. We care about you and will always be here for you with love and sincere appreciation, Bumble. So, in my opinion, if there was an apology they were going to come out with, honestly, I'd give that an A+. I don't know that there's much else I would have done in that scenario to try to make things better. Like I said, they apologized. They took ownership that they made a mistake. They showed that they genuinely were listening to their community by saying exact things that they heard, reiterated their brand values and their mission. Then they said, we didn't live up to those, so here's what we're doing about it. And not only are they making a donation, because anyone can make a donation, but I actually thought that using the reserved billboard space was a great choice to really show hey, we actually do care. We're taking our marketing budget and money we've already spent for this campaign, and we're actually giving it to these brands who represent our goals, our mission as a brand, our values as a brand, and allowing them to display an ad of their choice for the remainder of that time. So to me, if you are, again, like I said, a brand that gets themselves into hot water, or you are trying to make a stance during a really, trying or difficult time in the world, or when something big is happening or catastrophic is happening in the world, it's not only showcasing your stance based on your brand values and mission, but it's also putting your money where your mouth is. And again, if you have to apologize as a brand, honestly, I think this is a textbook example. So that is, in my opinion, the mistake that Bumble made, how they tried to apologize for it. Now the question becomes, will it be enough? Obviously, with that campaign, I think they alienated a lot of people, a lot of their target audience. It was a big mistake. So the question becomes, can they win those people back? I don't know. I think it's a great first step, but I don't know if it will be enough. And I also don't know if the people that it did alienate would have been excited about this new version of Bumble anyways, quote unquote, for those of you not watching on video. So it might have already been people that they'd alienated with this decision and this app change. And the marketing campaign was kind of just the cherry on top. So to me, I don't know if it will be enough, only time will tell. But I think it is a good first step. Now let's talk really quickly about what Bumble should be doing right now in their marketing, and what I would be doing as a competitor. Now, right now in their marketing, I think Bumble should kind of be reverting back. And what's really interesting when you look at Bumble's marketing before they released those ads, I actually thought they were doing a really great job. So they were in this like pre-launch phase, and they were building the excitement, obviously, of this new app. So they had said, dating needs a wake-up call. We're on it. Chapter 1 of the new Bumble coming 4/30/24. And it's a meme that says them, what are you wearing, me? And it's her like a Renaissance painting with her cat in her lap, like looking annoyed. It's like a carousel of memes, right? And it's like, you're the only girl I'm talking to. Have you heard of crypto? But I sent you flame emojis, right? Like making fun of men, honestly. What's so interesting is like, to me, and then it says like, there's a video, there's like an installation that they did. You guys can go look at Bumble's Instagram. I thought they did a great job. It's like this beautiful yellow bed, and it says, sleepy, same, wake us up on 4/30/24. So to me, and like all of this is like, I'm exhausted with dating. This is very much leaning into what their target audience is experiencing. So I thought they were actually going a great direction with their marketing. I was actually really looking forward to kind of seeing what they were going to do next. So I think they should be going back to this plan, talking about how dating's exhausting. And instead of saying like, go out and party, being celibate is not the answer. Just because you're exhausted doesn't mean you should date. Lean into like, you're exhausted, stay at home, let us find the perfect person for you. Let them reach out to you, let them do the work. That kind of thing, right? Because this is like now this like new version of Bumble, right? Where if they're really going to stick with that new version, okay, fine. I don't think it's the right move for them. However, if they're going to stick with that direction, go for like the I'm exhausted, dating sucks right now. You don't have to even make the first move anymore. We're going to find the perfect people for you. They're going to make the first move. We're going to offer you the best men. They're going to set everything up for you. They're going to be great men with good character and intentions, blah, blah, blah. That's the direction I'd be going with Bumble. Because people, if you look at like the response to a lot of these social media posts, a lot of people are like, wow, this is so good. So then in terms of what I would be doing as a competitor right now, girl, like with Hinge specifically. So if I were Bumble's competitor, like Hinge, for example, I would really be leaning into the like take back your power era almost, and primarily speak to women. Like Hinge offers like roses and stuff, right? But you only get 1 rose per day, and then you have to basically buy more. So I would be saying, and like everyone always talks about how Hinge basically like hides the people that are like the best match for you within the roses, right? So I'd be saying, take back like your power in dating, choose, your perfect person for like an entire month. We're giving you like 3 roses a day, right? So that, you no longer have to, like go crazy and find people or something like that. Like Bumble was essentially insinuating, like I would be putting power with dating back into the hands of women and incentivizing them to get on their app by giving them like 3 free roses every day instead of 1 if they signed up for like a year-long membership or something along those lines, right? So that's kind of what I would be doing differently. I'm like so curious to hear your guys' thoughts on how this campaign went, what you would have Bumble do differently, what you think they should be doing now. I'm so interested to know what you think like Hinge or Tinder or things like that should be saying in their marketing. Because I think this was a huge, huge mistake and mishap on Bumble's part in terms of marketing, obviously, given this episode. And so I'm really curious to hear your guys' thoughts. So if you're watching this on social media, any of those things, let us know in the comments below. If you're watching on YouTube, pop your opinion in the comments. If you're listening to this on Spotify, come over to YouTube, come over to Instagram, tell me your thoughts. I'm so curious. And I will see you guys in the next episode. Bye, guys.